Welcome to Mystery Sauce. In today's video, we're going to get into a true crime story. It's about a bricklayer whose name Bond stumbles upon a chilling package concealed beneath a paving stone. What he uncovers is beyond comprehension. A woman's trunk, severed from head and limbs. Now it's a ghastly puzzle waiting to be unraveled, so let's get right into it. It was 1836, and there was building work going on in the Edgware Road in London, about a quarter of a mile from the place where the Regent's Canal emerges from under the pathway. The buildings under construction were dwellings to be called Canterbury Villas, and they were very nearly finished. On the 28th of December 1836, a bricklayer on the site, by the appropriate name of Bond, noticed a package wrapped in sacking, carefully and very deliberately hidden behind a paving stone. He moved the stone to get a better look and was horrified to see a pool of frozen blood. He called the clerk of works and another of the building workers over, and together they opened the package. Inside, they were horrified to find the trunk of a human body. The head and legs had been completely removed. It turned out to be the body of a woman who was aged about 50 years old. The head had been removed in a clumsy and amateurish way. The neck part sawn through, part broken off. The legs had been taken off in the same clumsy way. In truth, the busy building site was a very foolish place to try to hide a body. It was bound to be discovered very quickly. The murderer must have been either stupid or insane. Now, in the event, in the very swiftest of murder trials, it was never really established which one it was. An inquisition held on the body on December 31st, 1836, at the White Lion and Edgware Road, returned a verdict of willful murder. The victim remained unidentified, and shortly afterwards, there was great excitement in the locality when it was reported that a human head had been discovered. It was found in the Ben Jonson lock on the Regent's Canal. Now, in the reach running through Stephen's Field, the trunk, which by then had been buried, was exhumed to see if it matched the head. A surgeon named Gribwood declared that the head and trunk did indeed belong to one and the same body. This was a step forward, but there was still no clue as to the identity of the murderer or the identity of the victim. The head was preserved in spirits and kept at Mr. Gribwood's house, where people could go and inspect it if it was thought that they could contribute to an identification. No further progress was made on this unusual and macabre case until February 2nd. Then a laborer named James Page was cutting osiers in a bed near Cold Harbor Lane in Camberwell when he saw a large bundle covered with sacking lying in a ditch, partly out of the water. He just happened to see it as he stepped over the ditch. While he was working, Page was curious and he lifted the bundle out of the water, and what he saw what looked like human toes sticking out of it, and became very alarmed. He called to a fellow worker who was close by, and together they opened the package. It contained a pair of human legs. They were taken off to Mr. Gribwood, who confirmed that the legs belonged to the body found in the Edgware Road. On March 20th, a major breakthrough came. A broker from Goodrich Street in the Tottenham Court Road applied to the Paddington churchwarden for permission to inspect the remains of the dead woman. Now, this was Mr. Gay, and he was concerned about the sudden and inexplicable disappearance of his sister, Hannah Brown, who had left her lodgings on Christmas Eve and had not been seen or heard since then. He was now very worried about what might have happened to her. Obviously, he feared that she might have been murdered. And when Mr. Gay saw that the head floating in the bottle of spirits, he identified it as that of his sister. His horror at this recognition can only be imagined. Now, the police made inquiries about Hannah Brown and discovered that she had recently been courted by a man called James Greenacre. She had been about to marry Greenacre. She left her lodgings in Union Street, Middlesex Hospital, to accompany her husband-to-be to his house in Carpenter's Buildings, Camberwell, to prepare for their wedding the following Monday. She had last been seen in the company of James. James was naturally the man the authorities most wanted to speak to next. Now, the magistrates at Marylebone Police Office issued a warrant for Greenacre's arrest. After great difficulty, James was taken into custody on the 24th of March at his lodgings at number 1 Street, Albans Place in Canterbury Road. It was discovered that he was living there with a woman called Sarah Gale and her child. He was not just living with Sarah Gale, he was cohabiting with her. The arrest of James and Gale took place under circumstances that confirmed the mounting suspicion of guilt. Inspector Feldham and a police constable went to Greenacre's lodgings and found him in bed with Sarah. Inspector Feldham told Greenacre the reason for his visit, and at first, Greenacre said he did not know anyone called Hannah Brown. And later he admitted that he had known her and had been on the point of marrying her, but that she had disappeared. He did not know where she was. James and Gale got dressed, and James then told Feldham it was lucky he had come to see him that night, as the next day they were sailing to America. It was an odd way of expressing the situation. And lucky for Inspector Feldham, certainly, and lucky for justice too. But certainly very unlucky for James and Sarah. The story about the imminent voyage to America certainly had every appearance of being true, because there were boxes all over the flat that were packed, closed, and tied up with rope ready for travel. The boxes were opened by the police, and they were found to contain many items that had belonged to Hannah Brown. There were even more incriminated items as well, including pieces of an old cotton dress that corresponded exactly with the cloth that the body had been wrapped in when discovered in the Edgware Road. The trial of James and Sarah opened on Old Bailey on April 10th. James was charged with the willful murder of Hannah Brown. Sarah was charged with being an accessory after the fact. In other words, with helping Greenacre in the full knowledge of what he had done. The judges were 3 justices. Public interest in the case was very great. Because of the macabre dismemberment of the victim and of dispersal around London, the court was packed. The trial was very short, reaching its conclusion on the second day. The judge began summing up at 6:15 p.m. The jury returned a guilty verdict after only 15 minutes. Greenacre was sentenced to death and hanged on May 2nd. Gale was sentenced to transportation. She would have to spend the rest of her life in Australia, which some would say was a fate worse than James's. That concludes today's true crime story. If you enjoyed today's story, then please hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you, and keep it saucy.